This has been a wild year for Pokemon with brand new releases, brand new teasers and leaks about more Pokemon classic games actually making their way over to the Switch 1 and the Switch 2. And today is no different. We got another major teaser that could mean we're actually going to get more classic games coming to the Switch, hopefully sometime this year. Of course, we just had Fire Red and Leaf Green, which are the remakes of the Gen 1 games. So obviously that makes us all think, what if we're going to get the remakes of Gen 2 and 3? So Heart Gold and Soul Silver being the remakes of Gen 2, and then Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire being the Gen 3 remakes, brought over to the Switch 1 and 2. A classic collection is one of the biggest things that we have been wanting forever now, and we did recently get this post from Central League saying new official artworks you have never seen before, and there's something extremely interesting about this. So we got a picture which obviously is set in Kalos, Lumio City right here, as well as this which is also 100% Kalos, Lumio City for Legend ZA. However, there is a third picture in here which is Mega Rayquaza on the Sky Pillar, which of course does not take place in the Kalos region at all. This is in the Hoenn region. Of course, that's where Rayquaza is from, Generation 3. And of course, Legend ZA brought back Mega Evolution for the first time in a very, very long time since Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. And if you don't know the significance of this, well, basically in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, we had the Delta episode, which was amazing. And I'm wondering if, well, what if we could be getting a game completely based around the Delta episode? Many people think that the Delta episode is actually peak. I love it. It is so fun to play, and I wish it were longer. Like when I played through it, I just wanted to see more from the Delta episode, but it is a little suspicious. Like, why have this Rayquaza picture alongside, Lumio City photos? And what is interesting about Generation 3 specifically is that Fire Red and Leaf Green in the coding internally actually does have a connection to the Generation 3 games, which I know is not specifically, Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, but it is Ruby and Sapphire and Emerald, the first Gen 3 games to be released. So there already is that connection. Fire Red, Leaf Green are Generation 3 games technically because they were released, within that same Generation 3 lifespan. So many people do think that Gen 3 games are going to be the next classic games, but well, what about Generation 2? I actually have a whole video about the Gen 2 remakes, a potential leak and big rumor that we just got that I'm going to cover in maybe about a week or so. So make sure to subscribe and turn on post notifications so you don't miss that. And help me reach my goal of 50,000 subscribers. Any sport goes such a long way. Alright, let's get right back to all of the hints today. Now, this is a very packed video, so don't go away just yet. I have a lot more to talk about and some crazy things to talk about, that is. Okay, so this is a crazy callback, but do you guys remember the Scarlet and Violet DLC? They actually added all of the OG starters, which, isn't anything too insane, but it was really cool because this is a reminder move. It gets us all familiar with every single starter Pokemon again, reintroducing classic Pokemon, classic starter Pokemon specifically, to some of the newer players that have never even seen those Pokemon before. And we also recently did get a very interesting 30th anniversary from the Japanese Pokemon YouTube account, basically just showing the entire history of all of the Pokemon games, for the big celebration of the 30th anniversary. And we know that Pokemon and Gamefreak and Nintendo, they love to pay homage to the older games. They have not forgotten about Gen 2 and Gen 3. I would absolutely love to have Generation 4 and 5 on the Switch as well, but I feel like those games are still kind of too new to be, I guess, in the classic collection. So that's why I think Gens 1, 2, and 3 just make the most sense overall. And of course, it is just the 30th anniversary, so you could say, well, this video is just for that. But they have shown us many videos just like this one. The Pokemon Champions first trailer that we had actually was basically the same thing, where it was a whole collection kind of showing off all of the years of Pokemon from the Game Boy, Game Boy Advance all the way up to modern Pokemon. And of course, we did later actually get Fire Red and Leaf Green that dropped. They even did the exact same thing with the Generation 10 reveal trailer. Literally, the beginning of it is quite literally just paying homage to all of the generations. You could see in this sketchbook video that they have, it quite literally just goes from generation to generation. So they have been showing us this many times recently. And I don't think it's just only specifically because it's the 30th anniversary. There has to be a deeper meaning to this. Gamefreak and Nintendo and Pokemon, they love to tease things ahead of time. Now, here's something that's very interesting. Pokemon Champions, there are soundtracks that you can buy in the game, but only generations 1, 2, and 3. You can see right here in the battle songs, there's only Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, Heart Gold and Soul Silver, Fire Red and Leaf green. So now that's important because there's no other ones. You can't buy any other ones at the moment. I'm sure they're probably going to down the line, but this is a huge hint and a huge teaser literally from Pokemon themselves. Why is it specifically Fire Red and Leaf Green and not just, red and green or red and blue? Why is it specifically Heart Gold, Soul Silver and not just Gold and Silver? And, going on with that, why is it specifically Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire? These are all of the remakes of those generations. We also know that later this year, we don't have anything big coming out for Pokemon. Generation 10 was originally going to be released this year, but it's actually coming out in 2027, so that literally leaves the rest of the year pretty open. Schedule is blank, basically. We have a Pokemon Presents coming up sometime in the summertime, no specific date announced yet, but it's going to happen probably June or July or August. I just recently made a video breaking it down because we do have a leaked rumor about the next Nintendo Direct, the General Direct that's probably going to happen no earlier than June, and there usually is a Pokemon Presents that follows. Like Nintendo General Directs and Pokemon Presents are pretty close to each other most of the time, right? So with that being said, as well as just the history of Pokemon Presents and, new trailers and stuff, we're gonna get more big reveals in the summertime. That'll be the perfect time for them to announce the next remake that they're gonna drop over to the Switch and the Switch 1, or it could just be the original games, I don't know, but I would prefer the remakes, especially with all of these hints, all of these huge teasers, and even leaks. We have covered a few leaks over the last couple of months about this specifically. And of course, if they were to port over, bring over the Gen 2 remake and the Gen 3 remakes, well, they would make a ton of money. Fire Red, Leaf Green was so hype. They definitely made a lot of money off that, and it was $20 a piece, digitally only, which is unfortunate. I would way rather prefer a physical copy of these classic games, but, so I feel like they could bring over, the Gen 2 and the Gen 3 remakes eventually. I would say they are going to start with Gen 2, but maybe they're not. Maybe they're going to skip over Generation 2 and just give us the Gen 3 remakes, and then maybe actually give us a brand new Generation 2 game, like a brand spanking new one, because we do have that Project Karasu leak that could be a Generation 2 game potentially. More on that to come, hopefully in the next couple of months. Around this wintertime would be a perfect time for them to drop another classic game, because obviously we have had a ton of Pokemon stuff recently, like almost too much Pokemon content recently, with Pokopia, Champions, Fire Leaf Green, everything is going crazy right now. Eventually people will get bored of those games, they will beat, Fire Red Leaf Green, Pokopia and stuff, and that leaves us with an empty time slot for later this year. I would still love to have an actual Delta Emerald video game, but we will have to see, because it might never happen. They do not do the third game thing anymore. Now it's DLC or remakes or sequels basically, or of course, Legends games. So who knows, maybe the next Legends game will be kind of based around the Delta episode. I just also think, like I said, since there's nothing else releasing later this year, I feel like it's just the perfect opportunity to give us some of the classic games, because it's not like they're giving us completely brand new from the ground up Pokemon games. They're just kind of giving us some things to fill in the empty gaps while the Generation 10 game is still being developed, and while we don't have a brand new game coming out this year, it would just be perfect as well for, Christmas break. Just playing, a part of an OG Pokemon game. That sounds so amazing to me. That's why I think we will be getting some sort of new classic Pokemon game coming sometime soon. If you are real and watching this far in the video, comment down below your favorite generation of all time. I will see you in the next one. Peace.
Someone